The American dream is getting a new look. For years, everyone said you had to be where the action was to make it the big cities. The coasts, those hubs where a sandwich costs $20 and your landlord negotiates like you're paying a ransom. But what if real freedom in America isn't about making more, but needing less? Right now, while the major cities are swamped with sky-high rents and housing shortages, a wave of overlooked towns is quietly changing the game. In these places, you can snag a house for under $60,000. Rents are so low you'll think there's a typo. The quality of life, honestly, it feels like you've unlocked a secret level. Welcome to the Great Migration. People are leaving the pricey zip codes and heading for towns where living doesn't drain your wallet. Let's take a look at a few. And if you're into this, don't forget to hit like so the algorithm helps us out. Subscribe to this channel could be your future getaway plan. No filler here. By the end, you'll either be ready to start packing or wondering why these towns are even this affordable. Let's begin with Vicksburg, Mississippi. This town sits up high overlooking the Mississippi River, full of bluffs and vintage charmets, like something from an old postcard. But here's the big question. Can you really live free in Vicksburg? When it comes to places where your money goes further, Vicksburg is always on the list. As of 2026, average rent here is just shy of $1,000 a month, usually between $900 and $995 for a typical apartment. One bedrooms can go for as little as $650. And even roomy 3-bedroom houses or lofts often run between $1,100 and $1,500. That's roughly 40% less than the national average. At a time when affordable housing seems out of reach, those numbers make you pause. Compared to major metro areas, where even a tiny studio costs more than $2,000, Vicksburg almost seems like it's on another planet. This is where the whole idea of living free really begins. When your biggest expense goes down, you notice that life doesn't weigh on you quite as much. But let's be real, saving money is just one piece of the puzzle. Every place that's cheap to live asks for something else in return. Take Vicksburg. The crime numbers aren't great higher than most people would prefer. It's a small town, around 20,000 residents, but both property and violent crime are above the state average. Still, you have to look a bit deeper. Most of the violent incidents happen out of sight, not in the open. For property crime, it's mostly car break-ins, especially 2 cars left unlocked. It's annoying, but it's not lawlessness. If you talk to locals, many will tell you they feel fairly safe, though your experience depends on which part of town you live in. Vicksburg isn't without risk. It is affordable, and that counts. Even so, there's a feeling here that statistics can't capture. Mornings are slow, and easy commutes are 10, maybe 15 minutes. No gridlock, no endless red lights. Instead, you get river sunsets, historic homes with big porches, and the expanse of the National Military Park, reminding you Vicksburg used to matter on a bigger scale. For retirees, this town often makes those most affordable lists. If you work remotely and earn your money elsewhere, your cash goes further here. But if you're young, looking for nightlife, a hot job scene, or the next tech wave, Vicksburg might seem a bit quiet. The local economy, it relies on casinos, healthcare, tourism, some small businesses, and the Army Corps of Engineers. High-paying jobs are scarce, and you can see signs of wear in certain parts of town. Shopping, it's basic, not upscale. This isn't a story about transformation, it's about holding on. For some people, just being able to afford to hold on is a kind of freedom by itself. That's the give and take of Vicksburg. It's not glamorous. It's not booming. You won't see it trending on real estate sites. But for the right person, that's exactly what makes it appealing. Right now, rent seems to control people's lives in so many American cities, but Vicksburg just quietly keeps to itself. The town trades all that rush and trend chasing for something less showy, more stable, more breathing room. Is it perfect? Depends on what you're after. If you want to lower your expenses and step outside the usual housing scramble, Vicksburg has a lot to offer. But if you're after non-stop excitement, the best safety numbers, or a packed social calendar, this place might try your patience. Among those old river towns everyone passed by where rent never skyrocketed, Vicksburg doesn't make a scene. It just endures. And honestly, in 2026, being able to last in a place you can actually afford might be the most underrated kind of freedom in America. Number 9. Danville, Virginia. If you're searching for a truly affordable spot on the East Coast Trail affordability, not just a real estate catchphrase, Danville stands out. Let's check the numbers. The median home price is about $150,000. That's 40 to 50% below the state average. In a part of Virginia where homes often go for more than $300,000, Danville feels like it missed the memo on runaway prices. You can still find a fixer-upper here for under $100,000, not a wreck, not an abandoned husk, but a real house with character and some history. Rents tell the same story. A one-bedroom costs about $900 a month, give or take. You can even find smaller, older apartments for $600 or $700, almost impossible to find elsewhere on the East Coast these days. For a city not far from North Carolina hotspots like Greensboro and Durham, that's unusual. Groceries, utilities, basic services, everything just costs less here. When people talk about places where your dollar goes further, Danville deserves a mention. But low cost of living isn't the whole picture. There's the matter of safety. Danville's carried a reputation for higher crime, and people still mention it. But there's more to it. In the past 5 years, overall crime has dropped about 8%. The police here solve more cases than average, and that actually matters. Even so, crime rates are still above the Virginia average, mostly property crime, especially theft. Like many affordable cities, safety depends a lot on which neighborhood you're in. Locals call it the pocket rule. The River District, downtown, and the Old West End historic areas that have gotten some attention feel totally different from the city's older industrial outskirts. Where you live matters, and it shapes your daily experience. But here's where Danville stands out. It's not just about scraping by, it's about starting fresh. The River District has seen millions invested in new life. Old warehouses now house lofts, breweries, restaurants, and small shops. The Riverwalk Trail runs along the Dan River, with biking and walking paths that look more like something out of a glossy magazine than an old mill town. Early in 2026, a $34 million expansion from Infinity Global and other big investments are bringing in new manufacturing and tech jobs. It's not a boom, it's careful rebuilding, and for some people, that feels more reliable. The history here stands out too. The Old West End has Victorian houses so grand they used to call it Millionaire's Row. Some of the most stunning historic homes in the Mid-Atlantic remain surprisingly affordable compared to similar houses in Richmond or Northern Virginia. But let's be clear, Danville still grapples with challenges. The pace is slower. Outside the revitalized core, parts of the city feel paused in time. Empty storefronts still exist. The poverty rate remains around 24%, affecting school funding and infrastructure. This is not a polished citywide renaissance. It's uneven, but that unevenness is also what keeps prices accessible. Danville represents a different version of live free in America. Not free of responsibility, but free from the crushing housing costs reshaping much of the East Coast. Brownsville, Pennsylvania, 40 miles south of Pittsburgh, along the Monongah River, sits a town that feels frozen in time. Brownsville. Do you want to understand what towns that cost almost nothing truly mean? This is it. Brownsville isn't just affordable, it's one of the cheapest places to buy a house in America. In 2026, median home prices sit between $78,000 and $92,000. But that's not what turns heads. Drive through town listings and you'll see houses for $10,000, $20,000, sometimes $40,000. Real houses, some are shells. Some need serious renovation, some are opportunities disguised as risk. This is extreme affordability. Median rent hovers around $850 per month. Studios and one-bedrooms can dip near $600 for the Northeast. For Pennsylvania, for a river town within reach of Pittsburgh's job market, that's rare. And while Pennsylvania is known for higher property taxes, the math shifts here because when your property value is low, the actual tax bill stays manageable. If you're searching for affordable homes near Pittsburgh, if you're looking for small towns with low cost of living, Brownsville lands on the short list. But price is only part of the story. Let's talk safety. With a population of roughly 2,300 people, crime per capita statistically appears higher than the national average. Violent crime has historically been elevated for a town this small, often tied to domestic situations and aggravated assault. Property crime is more common. Vandalism, theft, abandoned buildings becoming easy targets. At one point, this was a transportation powerhouse, a booming river hub during America's industrial rise. Today, boarded storefronts sit beside stunning historic architecture, and that contrast defines the atmosphere. Some call it decline, others call it hauntingly beautiful. Massive brick buildings line streets that feel untouched by modern development. The people who stay here stay intentionally. Community-led Fresh Start revitalization efforts are ongoing. Local pride runs deep in West Brownsville, and the Bureau Center areas are often described by residents as more stable and tight-knit. So, here's the question. If housing prices continue rising nationwide, if affordability continues disappearing in mid-sized cities, what does a place like Brownsville become? For some, it's a warning. For others, it's opportunity. Because when we say live free in America, sometimes that doesn't mean glamorous. Sometimes it means paying so little for housing that your biggest expense shrinks to something manageable. 7 Natchez, Mississippi. Perched 200 feet above the Mississippi River, wrapped in iron balconies, moss-draped oaks, and candle-lit verandas, Natchez might be the most visually stunning town on this entire list. And in 2026, it's quietly being called one of America's most affordable cities. Not affordable in a starter apartment kind of way. Affordable in a columned mansion with river views kind of way. Let's talk numbers. The median home price sits around $116,000. Small cottages can dip into the $60,000 range. But that's not the headline. The headline is this. You can buy massive 19th century historic homes, properties that would cost millions in Charleston or Savannah for under $300,000 here. In some cases, far less. This is one of the cheapest places in America to buy historic real estate. Rent even more surprising. Average rent in early 2026 hovers around $750 per month. Smaller apartments can still be found between $500 and $600. For a city with architecture this grand, that's unusual. And then there's the remote worker angle. Natchez has made national headlines with its Shift South relocation program, at times offering up to $6,000 for remote workers willing to move here. Low cost of living. Relocation incentives. Historic homes under $300,000. It checks a lot of boxes. But here's the full picture. With a population of roughly 14,000, Natchez statistically shows a high crime rate compared to towns of similar size. Like many small Mississippi cities with elevated poverty levels, much of that crime is concentrated in specific underserved neighborhoods. Residents will tell you the same thing. Location matters. The downtown historic district and the River Bluff areas are widely considered safe and walkable, particularly during daytime tourism hours. Community surveys show about 44% of residents feel pretty safe, not carefree, but aware. This is a place where awareness is part of daily life. Natchez leans heavily on tourism and Old South nostalgia. At times it can feel more like a preserved historical experience than a forward-driving modern city. Some call it charming, others call it performative. If you need major shopping or specialized healthcare, you may find yourself driving 90 minutes to Baton Rouge, and the climate hot, humid, swampy for much of the year. Summers here are not subtle. If your version of live free in America includes wraparound porches, low housing costs, and slow southern evenings overlooking the water, Natchez might feel like a dream. Just understand the dream is historic, and like all history, it comes layered. 6. Gary, Indiana. 30 miles from downtown Chicago, steel mills on the horizon, Lake Michigan at your doorstep, and housing prices that feel disconnected from one of America's largest metro areas. For decades, Gary has been the poster child of post-industrial decline, population collapse, abandoned homes, national headlines that shaped a reputation few cities could shake. But 2026 tells a slightly different story. Let's start with cost. Move-in ready, though often dated, Homes range between $40 and $70,000. That's not a typo. For less than the price of a down payment in many American cities, you could own property 30 miles from downtown Chicago. Rent tells a similar story. Average rent in early 2026 sits between $900 and $980. But this is where the split market appeared. In neighborhoods like Miller Beach, near Lake Michigan, and the Indiana Dunes, rent can spike to $1,500 or more, because proximity changes everything, and that proximity is the real wild card. But let's address the elephant in the room: crime. Gary has carried a tough city reputation for decades, and statistically crime rates are still above the national average. Property crime, especially theft and vandalism of vacant buildings, remains the most common issue residents face. Yet, something shifted recently. In 2025, Gary recorded its lowest homicide rate since 1970. Violent crime, citywide, dropped significantly. Non-fatal shootings were down more than 20%. That is not minor improvement. That's historic level change for this city. Police have invested in better technology. Closure rates, meaning cases being solved, have increased. It doesn't erase the past, but it changes the trajectory. 5. Centria, Illinois. Not every affordable town is dramatic. Not every low-cost city feels like a gamble. Some are simply steady. 2 hours east of St. Louis, surrounded by flat farmland and rail lines. Centria is the definition of Midwest middle ground. In 2026, the median home price sits around $80,000. You can find fully habitable two-bedroom homes listed between $22,000 and $35,000. Not shells, not boarded relics. Basic livable homes for less than the price of a new pickup truck. If you are searching for homes under $100K in Illinois, if you're looking for cheap houses in the Midwest, Centria consistently ranks near the bottom in cost. Rent is equally aggressive. Apartments around $600 per month. Single-family rental homes typically range from $850 to $1,000. And overall, the cost of living is roughly 19% below the national average. Housing specifically is over 50% cheaper than us averages. Utilities are manageable, groceries are affordable. Life here is not flashy, but it is financially light. Now, let's talk safety. Centria presents a mixed bag. With a population of roughly 12,000, certain crime statistics appear unusually high. Violent crime rates are often cited at nearly 2.5 times the national average. But context matters. Residents often describe it this way: if you don't go looking for trouble, you generally won't find it. Property crime, theft, and car break-ins is more common than violent incidents, especially near denser city center zones. Locals often recommend looking toward VOM, Central City, or the East Side for quieter, more residential streets. Like many affordable small towns, micro-location makes a difference. And here are the trade-offs. Population has gradually declined since the 1980s. Some areas carry what residents call dying town energy. Job opportunities are limited outside of local retail, light manufacturing, or commuting to nearby Mount Vernon. High-paying careers are scarce. This is a town best suited for retirees, remote workers, or anyone whose income isn't tied to the local economy. And culturally, it leans conservative. Some newcomers mention it can feel closed off at first. Small towns have deep roots. Integration takes time. So what is Centria in 2026? It's one of the cheapest stable towns in Illinois. It's affordable Midwest living without dramatic collapse. It's a place where your housing costs shrink dramatically without stepping into total uncertainty. For Muskogee, Oklahoma, it's the prairie town version of affordability. Not cinematic ruin, not grand southern mansions, just steady neighborhoods, wide roads, and prices that still feel grounded in reality. Let's talk cost. In 2026, the median home price floats around $170,000, but that number is skewed by newer developments on the edges of town. Drive into the heart of Muskogee and you'll find sturdy brick bungalows listed between $60,000 and $85,000. Solid homes, livable with yards. If you're searching for cheap homes under $100K in Oklahoma, this is where you start. Rent stays equally low. Median rent ranges from roughly $799 to $950. Studios can drop as low as $425 a month. That's not cheap for now. That's basement budget affordable for 2026. Groceries, utilities, and basic services run about 15% below the national average. For anyone looking for low cost of living in the south-central U.S., Muskogee consistently ranks among the most affordable cities in America, but affordability isn't frictionless. Let's talk numbers. Muskogee often ranks high in Oklahoma for both violent and property crime. Statistically, it can look intimidating. Neighborhood Scout and similar trackers routinely flag it above cities of comparable size. But here's the nuance. Residents and community polls frequently report feeling pretty safe. The consistent theme: crime is localized, often tied to specific pockets or drug-related activity. It's not evenly distributed across the city. People relocating here usually look toward Boone, Grandview Heights, or newer developments like Walnut Creek for quieter, more suburban environments. Micro-low matters, but let's address the trade-offs. Infrastructure in parts of town feels dated. Aging shopping strips, cracked sidewalks, buildings that haven't seen major renovation in decades. The economy is stable, manufacturing, healthcare, education, but it's not a tech boom hub. If you want explosive career growth inside city limits, you may not find it. And then there's Oklahoma weather. Summer heat is intense. Humidity sticks, and tornado season is part of life here. Storm sirens are not hypothetical. They're routine preparations. 3. Paducah, Kentucky. Paducah is often called the quilt capital of the world, but in 2026, it's building a different identity, one of the best bang-for-your-buck remote work towns in America. Let's start with cost. Average rent sits around $900 per month. Studios hover near $700. Two-bedroom apartments average just under $1,000. For a walkable riverfront city with an arts district and real cultural infrastructure, that's competitive. Home prices stay approachable. The median home value for a standard 3-bedroom is roughly $146,000. Older cottages can still be found between $75,000 and $95,000. If you're searching for affordable homes under $150,000 in Kentucky, Paducah routinely appears on that list. Overall cost of living runs 6 to 9% below the national average. Housing alone is nearly 20% cheaper than U.S. norms. Utilities are manageable. Groceries aren't inflated. Life here feels economically breathable. But here's where Paducah separates itself. The city is actively recruiting you through its Remote Workers Incentive Program. Paducah offers $5,000 in cash to qualified remote employees, $2,500 when you relocate and establish residency. The remaining $2,500 after 1 year. There's no vague lottery system. If you live more than 100 miles away, work full-time remotely for an employer outside the region, and commit to staying at least 1 year, you qualify. Beyond cash, they offer welcome packages, tickets to the National Quilt Museum, memberships to cultural institutions, invitations to networking events designed to plug you directly into the community. It's not just an incentive, it's an onboarding strategy. Now, let's talk safety. Paducah historically showed up on most dangerous small cities lists largely due to property crime statistics in a smaller population, but the trend line tells a different story. In January 2026, the police department announced its 7th consecutive year of declining crime. Overall crime dropped 7% in 2025 alone. Theft and larceny remain the most common issues, often above national averages, but violent crime rates are significantly lower than higher-risk cities like Gary or Vicksburg. Neighborhood matters. Conrad Heights, Forest Hills, and Heather Hills are rated highly for safety. Downtown feels well lit, patrolled, and active, especially during festivals and weekends. And that leads into Paducah's personality. This is not just another fading industrial river town. Paducah is officially designated a UNESCO Creative City, giving it a cultural credibility rare for towns this size. The Lowertown Arts District transformed formerly vacant homes by selling them for $1 to artists who committed to restoring them. Today, galleries, studios, and creative storefronts line the streets. The trade-offs? Humidity, Sitting between two rivers means summer air is thick and muggy, and socially, it's still a small town. It's affordable. It's proactive. It's creative. It's one of the few small towns in America literally paying remote workers to move there, while offering rents under $1,000. If live free in America means lowering your largest expense without sacrificing culture, without sacrificing safety trajectory, without sacrificing access to larger cities, Paducah may be one of the smartest calculated moves on this list. 2. East Liverpool, Ohio. Welcome to East Liverpool, once the pottery capital of the world. Now one of the best kept secrets for anyone searching cheap houses under $5,000, low cost of living 2026, or affordable small towns in Ohio. This is the kind of place where you can buy a piece of American history for the price of a mid-sized sedan. And no, this isn't a ghost town. It's a town trying to rewrite its story. Median home price around $15,000. But here's the twist. That number is skewed by a few newer builds. You can find historic 3-bedroom homes between $35,000 and $65,000. Rent, roughly $643 per month on average, nearly 60% below the national average. 1-bedrooms around $550. For context, that's less than what many Americans pay just for a parking space in major cities. If you've typed cheapest towns in Ohio, homes under $100K near Pittsburgh, or buy a house instead of rent, this town shows up for a reason, and here's what makes 2026 different. The city has aggressively torn down over 100 dilapidated structures in the past 2 years. Blight removal, cleaner blocks, fewer abandoned homes, dragging down values. That's not stagnation, that's stabilization. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. A lot of almost nothing towns come with serious safety concerns, but East Liverpool's crime rate is actually about 38% lower than the Ohio average. Violent crime? The odds are roughly 1 in 402, better than many cities in the region. In local surveys, over 80% of residents say they feel pretty safe or very safe. Police presence is visible. Community awareness is strong. Property crime, things like minor theft and vandalism, still exist. That's the reality of any post-industrial town. But compared to places like Youngstown or Steubenville, the numbers are noticeably more stable. It's not perfect, but it's not chaos either. Here's the truth. If you're looking for nightlife, this isn't it. Outside of a few local bars, evenings are quiet. Most higher-paying jobs about a 4 or 5 minute drive to Pittsburgh. Public transportation is almost non-existent. You need a car. And winter, long, gray, snowy. This is northern Ohio. It doesn't sugarcoat January. But here's the flip side. If you're a remote worker, if you want mortgage payments lower than a studio apartment in most cities, if you value space over status, this place starts to look less like a gamble and more like an opportunity. 1 Wanton, West Virginia. In 2026, one Rust Belt river town started making national headlines, not for crime, not for collapse, but for something unexpected. Extreme affordability paired with stability. Welcome to Weirden, now ranked among the best places to retire in the United States thanks to its low cost of living, safety, and proximity to Pittsburgh. If you've searched best cheap towns to retire, safe, affordable small towns, or low rent near Pittsburgh, this is where the algorithm quietly points. Let's talk numbers, because Weirden wins on numbers. Median home price around $117,000. Small mill worker homes frequently $60,000, $80,000. Stable market, not bargain bin, chaos. Median rent roughly $700. 1-bedrooms often list between $515 to $600. For context, that's West Virginia pricing with metropolitan access. And that access matters. Weirden sits just 20-30 minutes from Pittsburgh International Airport, 30 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. Pro sports, high-end restaurants, world-class hospitals. You can pay West Virginia housing prices and still make a Steelers game before dinner. That combination is rare. Here's what separates Weirden from most almost nothing towns. Safety. While cities like Gary or Vicksburg struggle with violent crime perceptions, Weirin consistently ranks as the #1 or #2 safest city in West Virginia. Violent crime rates are extremely low. Residents frequently report feeling safe walking at night, something you don't often hear in post-industrial river cities. The police presence is visible, responsive, predictable, and that predictability creates calm. If you're retired or just someone who craves real peace of mind, there aren't many places better than this. The town is clean, well cared for. You don't see the kind of neglect or decline that's overtaken so many old Rust Belt towns. Wharton genuinely feels like a community. Neighbors say hello. People still wait in line at the bakery. Stores are locally owned, not just another big box franchise. And if you love the outdoors, fishing, hiking, those Appalachian hills, they're all nearby. You still get city benefits too. Pittsburgh is close enough for a night at the theater or a great restaurant, but distant enough that you avoid all the noise and commotion. Naturally, there's a trade-off. Many residents here are retired. Nightlife, almost non-existent. If you want to make a big career leap, you'll likely be driving to Pittsburgh or maybe Steubenville. The atmosphere is traditional, working class. Some folks find comfort in that, others get bored. This isn't a place buzzing with excitement. It's stable, reliable, and that's exactly what draws people in. In 2026, with rents and property taxes constantly rising and medical bills straining fixed incomes, retirees across the country are feeling the pinch. But here, a moderate pension actually goes a long way. Social Security can cover your rent or mortgage. You're not buying into some slick illusion. You're buying tranquility. Streets remain quiet. Lawns are tidy. Payments are manageable. Sure, you won't get much nightlife, but you might gain something more valuable, real peace. These days, with $2,000 apartments in cities that never pause, that kind of steadiness is rare and, maybe more valuable than ever.